In this video, you will be learning about the particle model of matter and what relates to it. Pure substances and mixtures. Pure substances only consist of one type of particle, while a mixture consists of many different types of particles. The behavior of mixtures. Mixtures can behave in many different ways. Sometimes, if you mix pure substances together, the particles can spread out and move faster. Other times, the particles might move closer together and not move as much. Concentration. Concentration is the amount of solute dissolved in the solvent. When you put a rock in water, it will never dissolve because the particles are very attracted to each other. But if you put sugar in water, it will dissolve in almost no time because the particles are not that attracted to each other. Solubility. The solubility of a substance is what it takes for it to dissolve. How long it takes for something to dissolve depends on how much the particles are attracted to each other. It also depends on how compact the particles are. Viscosity. The viscosity of a substance is how fast it flows. Substances with a higher viscosity flow slower than substances with a lower viscosity. With something that has a high viscosity, has particles that are more closer together and more dense. With something that has a lower viscosity, the particles are further apart and not very dense. The effects on temperature and viscosity. When a substance with a higher viscosity gets heated, the viscosity becomes lower. This happens because when it gets heat, the particles become less attracted to each other, which lets it flow faster. The particles will also get further apart and start to move faster. The same thing happens with substances with a low viscosity, but opposite. When it gets colder, the viscosity gets higher. This means the particles are more attracted to each other, are closer apart, and are not moving as fast. Density of fluids. The density of a fluid is basically how heavy it is compared to other fluids. For example, water has a density of 1. If you pour vegetable oil in it, which has a density less than 1, it will float on water. Density, temperature, and buoyancy. Density, temperature, and buoyancy all relate to each other because the lower the temperature is, the more dense it is, which means there is less buoyancy. The higher the temperature, the less dense it is, which means there is more buoyancy. Buoyancy is basically how much a fluid can lift something up, so the more dense a substance is, the more buoyant it is. Compression of fluids. Compressing a gas is much more easier than a liquid because there is more space between the particles for them to go. In fact, materials in a liquid state are called incompressible, which means they are very hard to compress and it takes a lot of force. Pressure in fluids. Pascal's law. 1 Pascal is equal to the force of 1 Newton over an area of 1 meter square. When you apply pressure to an enclosed container with a fluid in it, it evenly spreads out the pressure throughout the fluid. Another thing is the greater the depth, the greater the pressure. If there is a 12-foot deep swimming pool and you go all the way down, your ears might start hurting because there is more pressure down there than up at the surface.